we as an industry are so good at adapting. I think it's certainty in time because most organizations can pivot so effectively within our industry.
Welcome to The Fearless Foodie, the podcast that gets honest about what it really takes to thrive in food and retail. I'm Amy Wilkinson, coach, speaker and trusted partner to food industry teams with lived experience of the pace, pressure and politics that come with the job. Fearless Foodies cut through the fluff and get straight to what actually helps, and that's exactly what we're here to do. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to The Fearless Foodie. Today, we're lifting the lid on how decisions about our food system actually get made and why it matters for every one of us working in food and retail. I'm joined by Sarah Bradbury, who is CEO of IGD, who brings over 25 years experience across retail and food. IGD has been uniting and supporting the industry for more than a century, and Sarah is now at the helm and helping to shape a more collaborative, resilient future for the food industry. We dig into what IGD really does, what the Food Strategy Advisory Board is all about, and the changes that are coming down the track for manufacturers, retailers, and for all of us in food. It's a practical, honest conversation. So welcome, Sarah.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really excited, although quite apprehensive as I've never done a podcast before.
Oh, you don't need to be scared. I'll be kind, I promise. I've already said to you, haven't I? I'm not here to catch you out, don't worry, and I'm not here to coach you, so you're fine, you're fine. I'm really privileged that I'm the first podcast, or we're the first podcast you've come on, so it's great to hear. And actually, it was Briege who has been on was on the first season of the podcast that recommended me to you after, it was literally at the end of us recording, I was like, who else can we get on? And she was like, I know, Sarah. So you obviously worked together in the past. But for people that don't know you or know anything about you, let's start with you and then tell us about IGD. So tell us about Sarah.
Well, thank you. So I have two children, number one in my life, 16-year-old and 13-year-old. Not so good at managing teenagers and finding, but yeah, they keep me very busy. I'm married and I live in Hertfordshire.
Mm-hmm. That's a great start. You know what? I love that because so many people just I go straight to job, go straight to, I am a CEO, I am this, that and the other. And you led with your children and your family. And I flipping love that, Sarah. So thank you. So tell us about IGD. Tell us about your role at IGD and what led you to end up at IGD.
Well, thank you. IGD is an absolute privilege to run. I feel really, really lucky. Being a CEO wasn't part of my plan in life, if I'm honest, but joining an IGD, an organisation, as you say, has been around for over 120 years. We're a strategic food and grocery insight organisation and foresight, and we're here to unite the industry. And then all of our profits go to benefit society and the industry. I like to describe it as we're your IGD. We're here for the industry. Insight drives action and action drives change. So that's really what we're all about. What's quite interesting, though, is the industry itself sees us in lots of different pockets. So you've either been to an event or you might read our insight or you've been part of some of our forums. So we have an incredible food system and that's what excites me. And so much in this country we've got to be proud of. And there's so many people doing amazing things, but actually we do need to change. And that's what's quite exciting, that we're kind of, I think, the next start of a kind of food revolution for the future, massive transformation. And if we can play our part in that to kind of be more collaborative, it's an honour to be part of this role. So when after 20 amazing years at Tesco, when somebody kind of suggested this to me, I thought, oh, actually, I really want to be able to work across the industry. I think I could help. And IGD felt a great opportunity to try and do that.
Yeah. There's loads of interesting stuff in that. Like there's that almost that personal mission bit for you and I know when we've talked before, there's a bit of that. You get to a stage, don't you, where you feel like you have made as much impact as you can where you are, and actually how can I influence more? How can I impact more? Which is a bit like when I set up Fearless Foodies, it was a bit like that. I want to keep doing it, but I want to do it in a different kind of way. But I also think some of the stuff that you were talking about IGD, and you know what, I realised we need to even just say what IGD stands for, because people might not even know. It's one of those, we love an acronym, don't we, in the food industry. Let's go on. What?
So IGD is the Institute of Grocery Distribution, which is not a very exciting title, but actually, really importantly, recently we've started talking about the power of it being an institute. And actually, whilst it sounds a bit fuddy-duddy, that kind of safe place that's got the knowledge, in an environment and an era where you don't know where you're getting your knowledge from. If you can rely and trust in an institute, I think that's quite a kind of special place to have a role as an industry.
Yeah, and I think there really is something. I mean, I've even like way back at the start of my career, I can remember using IGD to do some of the free training on, how to get into the industry. And actually, even thinking about when I said acronyms, I remember, I don't know if it still exists, but there was something on the website that was a list of loads of industry acronyms, which was really helpful. I think it was because I did a category management course with IGD as well when I pivoted into category management. But, there's lots of different ways that IGD can be used. And I used it loads in an insight role because obviously there's lots of insights in there, but it isn't just about that, is it? There's lots of different ways it can be used.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the powerful bit, really. The insight itself from a retail and a shopper and a market track barometer, but actually then how do you use that and what do we do with the profit? As you say, we still do loads of free training out into schools as to, getting people into the industry, which we know is a massive challenge for us. And I kind of see we launched Feeding Britain's Future nearly 15 years ago. We still do just as much with the support of industry and really helping people understand. But there's so much more to do because, as we know, children are not coming into our industry and don't see the value and the breadth of everything that we've got to offer. So, yeah, I think there's many different ways people come into IGD, but actually your acronym thing, I think we should refresh that because definitely it's confusing, isn't it, across the board?
Yeah, and yesterday I did 20 minutes talking to some final year students at Nottingham Uni, and straight away there's just so many things that you just say and then you're like, oh, even like the word MPD, it's like, oh, you might not know what that means, and we just do it. And when people start out, they're just, well, not even, you can be in the industry for quite some time and still be like Googling under the table. What does that?
Yeah, exactly.
Move from one retailer to another and they call it something different. So yeah, I think get the cheat sheet ready again. But yeah, for sure. And I love how IGD is this, you're putting the profits back into giving back. And I think there's also something about it feeling like it is independent and then can pull different parts of the industry together, because it's something I talk about quite a lot on the podcast when it comes to things like how are we going to attract talent, issues around sustainability, all of the stuff that really matters. A lot of the time when you're in competing businesses, it's very hard to get one sort of collective view because everybody's worrying about, particularly I think even because it rightfully so, competition laws are in place and we're always paranoid about what we can say and what we can't say. So, and this is what I was alluding to at the start, really. I sort of said to you when we met, I've started to notice that IGD is becoming a little bit more influential as opposed to just providing the insight, just kind of like pulling different parts of the industry together and actually, I don't know if lobbying is too strong a word, you're probably like, we're not lobbying, but, getting more involved in different things like the food strategy advisory board, all of that sort of stuff. So tell us a bit about that because, well, there's two things I want to know: your role in that and steering the ship in a slightly different direction, and then just kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit to tell people, why you're doing that and what impact it's having.
So look, your first point I think is absolutely critical, which is we as an industry are really siloed in the way that we work. So we're either kind of agriculture or we're processing, or we might be brands, or we might be kind of retail. And often there is a certain part of the industry, I always used to say, do you include me? And they're like, no, you're down the other end. And for me, the power of working across the board, people talk about system change quite a lot and it gets really confusing. Basically means thinking about everyone along the way and what's the best way forward. So for me, that was the attraction actually of coming to IGD, because I could see I was in a very, very sophisticated organization in Tesco. We could see kind of how to move things forward. But because of that competitive environment, you weren't allowed to phone up 3 other retailers and say, let's do it together. So I do think kind of some of that burden is on the suppliers to try and get people working in the same way. But actually, as an independent organization that is here for societal good, again, it's a proper privilege because you can try and pull things together. We've just done a sustainability kind of framework, which actually was 5 manufacturers that said, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're not allowed to sit in a room together. Could you help us? And it's been brilliant because they've really helped us build it. So it's come from real life information and we've managed to kind of pull it together. And then they're advocates of the work, which is even better.
So you can facilitate things. You can almost in a way that wouldn't happen otherwise.
Yeah. So actually for us, we can either get our own ideas or we kind of bring people's in. And actually the benefit of the forums is that kind of we really get them to help lead kind of some of the conversations for the future. So the lobbying bit's quite interesting because we don't lobby, but we can share information. And I think there's just different ways of looking at it. And if you're trying to build a picture for the industry and share it with people, get feedback from people and kind of enhance that, and then share it with people who can make decisions on behalf of the industry, I think that's quite powerful. And that's really what we've tried to foster more of, which is it's not IGD's ideas. It's everybody kind of coming together. Maybe we need to use specialist consultants to help build the kind of picture. And then what I've realized is the independent presentation has more impact than individual organizations, which I think has got to be helpful for all.
Yeah, that's a really good point because the trust isn't necessarily there if it feels like there might be a commercial reason people are doing certain things. And I'm just interested in that kind of how do you get that balance right? Because I almost feel like there's an element of we're going to have unconscious bias in there and stuff like that. Like, so how do you make sure that you're getting a balanced view when you are pulling this stuff together?
It's another really good point. I think the food system transformation that we all need to go through, there is going to be winners and losers. I think that's the really difficult part. But we as an industry are so good at adapting. I think it's certainty in time because most organizations can pivot so effectively within our industry. So we try to start from an economic perspective, really understanding the challenges, and then try and kind of forge a bit of a path, or at least kind of one step towards a future path, and then actually ask. So when we do our food inflation forecast, for example, we will speak to 12 different companies to make sure and just to validate some of the work that we're trying to do. So that's it. We're independent. We do our absolute best. And I think we're lucky with the capability across the organisation that we can actually use some of that knowledge to challenge that unconscious bias.
Yeah. And I think it's like anything, isn't it? You have to be getting as much data as you can in the way we would as insight people anyway. But it is just having those checks in place to make sure, because the point of something being unconscious is it's unconscious, right? So you sort of need somebody else to have a look and call it out. But it's good to hear that because I do worry sometimes about things like the press and, you know, the industry can be vilified in so many ways. So it's almost like having a voice that is balanced and independent that can not fight that, but almost, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but, you know, just giving that a more balanced view and being able to be a voice for the industry that isn't, you know, led by, you know, some big bad person that's trying to make everybody die and be fat, you know, is what it is sometimes.
I think we are going through a really difficult time, actually. And I do think the industry has a bad rep. So actually, the more that we can help each other, the more we can show alignment, more that we can actually problem solve. And that's got to be across the board because there's some amazing people in our industry that pivot and help all the time, that are the right people being asked, are the right people really helping find the answers. I think that's the critical element. And I'm very lucky with the relationship I've developed as part of co-secretariat of the food strategy. I know I don't know all the answers, and being really honest about who can help make those points to government, I really understand it, and so that they can see. I recently went to a retailer with some of the government colleagues and walked them from the back door and said, right, okay, this is how it works. And they were really grateful. And it's just kind of some of that people don't understand how our industry works. And actually none of us understand the whole picture. So let's kind of piece it together.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really good point. And I was going to ask you about that because it's the disconnect thing, isn't it? Because I know there's frustration from the industry side that, how do we get government to listen, or how do we influence, not in a, because we're trying to, get commercial advantage, just because we want to make a difference kind of way. And then there's probably frustration on the other side that they're not getting behind those doors and stuff. So is that part of what you're doing in terms of working with the Food Strategy Advisory Board? Tell us a bit more about that, because I feel like people listening that are probably mostly industry side want to like peel back the door and know what's going on there a little bit more. All right, time to give a quick shout out to the people making this podcast happen. These are the brilliant sponsors backing bold, fearless conversations like this one. Let's hear from them. Ever chase a test result at 5:59 p.m. on a Friday? Yeah, we've been there too. That's why we're proud to be partnered with IFP Labs, a lab network that actually gets what it's like to work in food. They support businesses across Europe with accredited testing for food, feed, swabs, water and more. And they do it with a quick turnaround, expert insight and genuinely reliable service. IFP Labs is a laboratory network made up of companies who we know and trust because they're already supporting the people behind the products you love. Check them out at ifp-labs.com and breathe a little easier next time you've got a product launch riding on that test report. At Fearless Foodies, we work in partnership with food and retail businesses to develop confident, capable people at every level. From leadership coaching to team development and practical training, everything we do is rooted in real-world industry experience and designed to create lasting impact. If you're ready to invest in your people, head to fearlessfoodies.co.uk to see how we can support. And we're back. Let's dive right in.
So from happy to be very transparent. From a food strategy perspective, I think the conversation's been quite clear, which is Henry Dimbleby's work did a lot of the diagnosis. And whilst it hadn't been taken forward all the ideas, actually, I think it's a really solid piece of work. We're slightly in a different place now, but not hugely. So if you think kind of building from that, how do people need to change their diets? What do we want to do from an environmental perspective, etc.? The journey we need to go on as an industry is kind of quite clear. So the advisory group was set up in order to support the DEFRA team and the ministers to really have a safe space to ask questions. And so far, even difficult questions, it's been kind of a really useful environment to kind of test, to get a few people working together, coming back, really galvanizing some of the knowledge out in the industry. And I just want to add, this is kind of complementary to the trade bodies' work that they do as well. So clearly that goes on in force, kind of parallel to this as well. So in July, when the Good Food Cycle was launched, it was kind of 10 headlines, really, lots of detail behind. But I think what's been quite helpful coming out of that is everybody was like, yeah, actually, wouldn't that be the future food system that we want to create? So whilst people want more detail, myself included, it is kind of, okay, we can all get behind that. The how is kind of the important bit now. We've had ministerial changes, a little bit slower than we'd have liked to be. But actually, the first step that was announced with the Department of Health plan, actually unpicking what that means. We were quite involved in those conversations, but measurement across the industry feels very supported. Targets makes everyone nervous, but I think, that's going to take time, stepping kind of measurement and then into targets, making it fairer across the board. The announcement last week was around a regulatory gateway, which sounds all very white or techie to me, but fundamentally for people to think, when I'm doing anything in government, how does it affect the food system? In my mind, has to be a good thing, because I think it's quite fragmented. So you won't see a big publication of kind of this is the new food strategy. It's going to be iterative over time with a kind of closeness with Department of Health, and then closeness now from a kind of how do we align things together. And then there is a kind of working group, obviously with the farming community, on what do we look at from a primary production perspective. So that's the next big piece of work that's work in progress. And in the background, we're doing lots of support, which is public on our website, around kind of food inflation. Clearly, people are quite paranoid about that. People are worried about what that might mean. But what are the drivers beneath it? And how do we compare with Europe? We are a very cheap society for food, and we need to kind of make sure we're realistic about that in the future versus maybe some knee-jerk reactions on the way.
Yeah, I could go off onto a real rant about the whole thing because I mean, I know as an end consumer, right, the food inflation, I really feel it in our household. It's changing our habits. And obviously, as an ex-insight manager, I'm like going, oh, look, I've gone to this meal occasion now and I'm having toast meals instead and all of this sort of stuff, like inquisitive stuff going on in my brain. But there's also like, I have this fundamental belief that we don't pay enough for our food in the UK. And therefore, the knock-on effect, because I'm all about people in what I do, is that has a knock-on effect at people in the industry. So I mean, it's like in my pocket I would like to not have to pay more, but I know that morally and we probably should be paying more for our food because, well, the supply chain would be more secure and people would be, feel more secure in their roles and all of that sort of stuff. But sorry, that was just my little soapbox I have to get in when we talk about that sort of stuff. But I think it'd be really interesting to people listening, because I was reflecting when you were talking about it's not going to be a big bang. Like I know when Henry Dimbleby report came out, everybody's like, oh, let's get through this and read it all and all of that sort of stuff. What does this all mean? And that iterative process, I think, is a good thing because it needs to happen in stages. You can't just go, wow, we're going to change everything at once. But I guess then for people listening, it's hard to know how to stay on top of what the latest thing is, I guess, isn't it? So it's like, how do they make sure that they're kept up to date with or being proactive and thinking about what they might be needing to do,
Yeah, I think the bit for us is our industry works faster than government. It's a learning for me. And so you're kind of unlikely to get caught up. Even when announcements are made, it's going to take a while to actually kind of implement. I think there's still a lot of understandable concern around the MPN model, the nutrient profiling model. And that is understandable and that needs working through, but it's not going to be launched kind of tomorrow. So just on the food strategy, we actually are now doing once a month. Actually, it's on Thursday this week. And then it will be again kind of every 4 to 5 weeks, a webinar, which is people can go in and just watch, which is this time it's DEFRA and Department of Health together. And there's a Q&A as part of it. So it's just a light touch update there for people to have a look at where things are going.
Yeah, it's really good to know because I do think a lot of the time, people will be listening to this and they're probably on a dog walk or something because like when else you listen to podcasts or on their commute to work. And like you say, we're so fast moving in the food industry that sometimes it's really hard to, like, that you should be keeping up to date with things, but it's hard to know when to fit that in. But things like IGD doing that will be really helpful to people. So thank you. Thank you to the organisation and thank you for sharing that. So what else would you like people to know about what IGD are doing? Is there anything else that I've missed that you're like, I should have said that, I should have told them about that, or what's next for IGD?
Oh, what a great opportunity. So IGD, as I say, it's just a total privilege. The magic of the food industry, kind of really bringing it to life, and how do we work across the board? I think in the next 12 months, we're going to really keep focusing on kind of the economic, the forecasting side, unpacking what is driving the economic side of inflation and the cost of food, really to demystify it. From a health perspective, we're working with Department of Health, supported obviously with the trade bodies around what does that look like. So I think there's been a nice stake in the ground, but really, how does that work? How do we help people? But when the NDNS data comes out, that's going to be quite important from the national dietary data to really think, where is our diet going generally in the wrong direction from what we know so far, and how might those interventions work? Feeding Britain's Future, watch out, because it will be back in one form or another. I think this is a place we launched Make Your Mark 18 months ago, which was really trying to pull together the industry. Someone described it as kind of composing a choir, which I quite like, because actually there is there's magical stuff going on across the industry. Let's pull it together so that it's easy to kind of access, and helping students really think about what jobs there is for the future and how they might kind of go into our industry.
And what I would just say for anybody listening that doesn't know about Make Your Mark, we've got an episode that we did back sort of 18 months ago about that. So I'll make sure that we put a link in the show notes.
Oh, brilliant.
To this episode because Amy Burke came on and talked about that campaign. So that's a really good one for people to go back if they want to understand a little bit more about that.
Excellent. Thank you. And then finally on sustainability and resilience. So really, we're trying to look forward on the supply chain. What's going to happen? Where are we going to need to source from in the future? Kind of making that very available for people to see. And then kind of how do we really step forward? And a lot of it is in the agriculture side. How do we kind of support that change through baselining and other kind of pieces of work? But yes, exciting times ahead. I think training and supporting, as you mentioned, the free training before, and learning, and what does that look like going forward? Again, we're working quite hard on that, because industry are liking to come together, aren't they? More and more, I think, as we're working more virtually. And how can we help that? It's funny, 2 years ago, I thought that our event side of our organisation would slowly peter away. And actually, really proud of the events we've run this year. We ran a big Future of Food event on the 1st of October, which was unbelievable to get Chris Whitty in real life talking about the challenges across the system. And he was really funny as well.
Was he? And he wasn't going, next slide. So there's events, there's training, there's so many people, so many things that people can get involved in. And you must be super busy, Sarah. How do you, I'm just going to bring it back to you. We started talking about you, and we started, right at the start, we were talking about, how your passion for wanting to bring the industry together has led you down this path of leading IGD. But I know that trying to drive change and trying to pull people together and all of that can be quite challenging, shall we say. So how do you keep yourself going? How do you, Sarah, as an individual, keep yourself going and motivated to keep driving those changes?
Thank you, Amy. I think I find it really difficult to turn off, if I'm honest. And when I see opportunities, I can't help myself. And I think there's so many people with ideas and really wanting to drive it. And I feel a bit of a responsibility in the job I'm in that I can help people do that. So I think that's probably what inspires me every day. I want to empower fairness is kind of something that's really, really important to me. And so when I think about empowering change, doing the right thing, I can't help it really from how do I drive me forward. I did think this might be an easier job than my previous one, but I've epically failed in doing that.
I'll just go and coast in this job. Oh no, I've got a million ideas and they keep me awake at night.
Exactly.
And it all needs to be fair and just. But it sounds like you want to do the right thing, gives you that fire in the belly. It helps you keep going, but also you're in a position now, you've got all these great ideas, but you can do something with them because you can pull the industry together. You're kind of the facilitator now of, pulling together other people's ideas, your own, and, you're going to make that change. I love that, Sarah.
But I also think I'm so lucky because it's not a lonely job, which I'm really, really lucky about, because there's so many other people that are really wanting IGD to be successful, as to have a kind of a broader role, helping the industry more, kind of talking to government in a slightly different way, not in the kind of formal ways, but more of that kind of facilitator, as you say. So, as I say, it's a privilege that does keep me awake at night.
Well, I want to say, make sure you take care of yourself, because I am there. My mission is like the people mission behind the food industry, and I'm exactly the same. I got told off by one of my assistants this morning because she was like, "I saw you at 5 a.m. doing because it logged on whatever system I was on that I was doing." I was like, "But I just was thinking about it, and I just wanted to do it there and then." So it happens, but as long as you're also looking after yourself as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been a really interesting conversation. I definitely feel like I know and understand more about IGD than I did, and I know listeners will as well. If there's anything you would like listeners to take away from this episode when it comes to IGD, what would that be?
We are your IGD. We are here for the industry. We can't do everything. We're a small organisation, but fundamentally we are here to help, to unite, to inspire the industry and help the industry transform in a way that we should be valued, because we are a phenomenal industry. And I think that's the bit that we're here. Please reach out to us. Our website's free. There's just more we can do together, but we can't do everything.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Either on LinkedIn or just by email.
Fabulous. So thank you so much, Sarah. It's been a really great conversation. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this conversation helped you to see the bigger picture around IGD, the food strategy work happening behind the scenes, and why collaboration matters more than ever in our industry right now. If you found this episode useful, follow the show for more straight talking tools and conversations for inside food and retail, and share it with colleagues who would love to listen to it too. Be bold, be brave, be fearless. That's a wrap on this episode of The Fearless Foodie. If it hit home, subscribe, leave a review and share it with someone who's ready for less fluff and more real talk. And if you're ready to build a bolder, braver, more brilliant team, come find me at fearlessfoodies.co.uk. Until next time, be bold, be brave, be fearless.